This is a recording of my message that went viral on LinkedIn and Facebook early February, the 5th today and the 4th yesterday, and Saturday the 3rd. It was on the watershedding group, and after 17 hours at 11 o'clock on Saturday night it was removed, and we think it was removed because it mentions the DA, although it doesn't criticize the DA. It just says that the DA and the ANC could have done things differently. The posting starts off with a picture of Table Mountain, a photograph that I took from a yacht in September 2008, and people can feel free to copy and share. The post is called Declaring a State of Emergency, Read the Water Crisis and Other State Failures, and as it now, it's at 5,861 views, 20 likes, 7 comments, 7 shares, and this is LinkedIn, and it's amazing that it's getting close to 6,000 views. It's written by David LIPSCHITZ, myself, and I'm going to start reading it now. People should be cross with themselves for allowing the situation to get where it is. When the likes of myself, Anthony Turton, Graham Tech, and many other active citizens have been warning of this impending disaster for decades. And please, this is not the worst drought ever. It is the worst drought in 33 years. It is the worst water management crisis ever, and the worst water management crisis was in 1800. So this year is actually the worst year in 100 years. But if you take 3-year averages, which is how droughts are normally measured, it's the worst drought in 33 years. South Africans and their governments have known that Cape Town is a water-scarce region for millennia, hence why the Bushmen learnt how to live in the desert. And in 1800, modern civilization learnt that the Tavern of the Seas, with its abundant Hurikwacha water, was actually water-scarce. The problem? People are pathetic. They plan for retirement in 30 years' time, but they don't plan to be alive next week. Many people are free riders. This term is used in the book The Voluntary City. Many people are free riders, e.g. in Monaghan, the suburb where I live. About half of residents are members of Monaghan Crime Watch, and the rest get the Monaghan Crime Watch services for free. The same with poor people who use the roads, paid for by the taxes on the taxpayers. And what of the neighbour's alarm that goes off and no one does anything about this? Because everyone thinks that someone else will phone the Armed Response Company, or will look over the wall to see what's happening. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in one of his books. I've read all his books. When my neighbour's alarm goes off, I contact Monaghan Crime Watch. I take responsibility. But when queues of people arrive at a shop with 40 days of water to go from the dams, then it is these people who haven't been focused on what really matters in our world. What really matters is living a healthy life. After that is ensuring that we are alive next week. And after that it is finding the right clothes, the right accommodation, the right transport. Please note, Cape Town is running out of water from the dams. Cape Town is not running out of water. Has anyone noticed the 30 springs coming down Table Mountain with hundreds of rivers? People are fighting over water in shops and in Spring Road and at South African breweries and Newlands. But what about the hundreds of rivers? What about Kamissa? What about Lisbik and Black Rivers and other rivers in the Cape Town? What about the huge aquifer? In 1483, Cape Town was discovered. Of course, people lived here before that, but it was discovered by the Europeans. And in 1652, the Dutch East India Company sent a fleet of ships to the most beautiful cape in the world, to establish Cape Town as the Tavern of the Seas, a place for a thirsty person to quench Xi's thirst. Xi is a pronoun which means he and she, xe, and to get fresh fruit and vegetables from the company garden and the many farms that sprang up around Table Mountain and into the Paarl, Stellenbosch and Constantia valleys. Many of those farms still exist today, and some are even in the same families, or perhaps have only 1 or 2 families owning these farms for decades, centuries. Of course, the elephant in the room is the sea. There are 1,332 million, actually billion, 1,332 billion cubic kilometers of water in the sea, and Cape Town just happens to be on the coast next to the sea. Many desalination projects have started and been scrapped over the years. In 2005, Graham Tech, and there's a link to Graham Tech in the article, built a 300,000 litre a day plant and offered it to the city free of charge. That was a 2 million rand donation, and they would have installed it and maintained it for free. The city said that they didn't put it in because of the cost of sales cost, but Graham Tech said they would have maintained it for free. A hydrological engineer named Ian Nielsen. Ian Nielsen has been the City of Cape Town's Chief of Finance and Executive Deputy Mayor for decades. I didn't actually know he was a hydrological engineer. I met him a few years ago and I told him about this crisis and about the impending electricity crisis where people take their systems off the grid, and I showed him how we could work together with him, and he said, no, we must just change the tariffs. So he has now been put in charge of fixing the water crisis. And I spoke, and he sat on the offer from Graham Tech for 13 years, from 2005 till now, and did nothing with a 2 million rand donation, potential donation. I spoke to one of the top guys at Graham Tech and asked how long it would take to install the system. He said tomorrow. I said, huh? He said that the system has been in the factory in Somerset West for 13 years and they use it as a demo unit. Premier Helen Zille and the DS said that the Water Act and the government are preventing them from implementing water projects in the Western Cape, and that big dams and water provision are government's responsibility. But after trying for 10 years to see Helen, I happened to be sitting with her at the press club briefing last Sunday when the Minister of Water and Sanitation was speaking. I asked Helen if she knows what a mandamus is. She said yes. I asked her if she was actioning one. She said yes. And then I asked her if she knows that under the rules of the South African Constitution of 1996, she can enact a state of emergency in the Western Cape. She said yes. And yet all this week, what I've heard her say is that we must save more water and that the government says government's fault. And even today, Monday the 5th, she again says that the ANC is at fault and there's nothing that they can do. However, mandamus would command the Minister of Water and Sanitation to do her job in terms of the Constitution of 1996 and the Water Act of 1998. As Helen has not done a mandamus, I have submitted one. And if Helen does not declare a state of emergency by the 10th of February, then I will declare one. I have the right to do it in terms of the Constitution as long as I have followed due process and submitted my mandamus and warned government and all other interested parties of my intentions. I'm using the internet to warn everybody, and I've tweeted everybody in many people in government, international, the Sixth Fleet, AfricaCom, the President of America, European Union people, World Economic Forum. I've tweeted everybody. Well, maybe not everybody, but certainly a lot of people. Note that an interdict is designed to stop someone from doing something. A mandamus is designed for a court to tell a lower court, or for the Constitutional Court to tell anyone, including a minister or the president, to do something. Please note that the Constitutional Court doesn't do this automatically. It has to be commanded to do it. Everyone thinks that the Constitution and the Constitutional Court protects South Africa's inhabitants and citizens. Yes, it does, but it has to be activated, and I've just activated it. Then there's the matter of 87 litres of water per person per day, which just became 50 litres per person per day on 1st of February 2018. And why is it 87 litres per person per day? I think the reason is because that's the minimum amount that a city with waterborne sewage can allow for a person to use per day. 2 years ago, when the water crisis started, note that we knew about it in 1800 already, this city used 1.2 billion litres of water a day. Today it is down to 600 million litres of water a day. Cape Townians have come to the party and halved our consumption. And instead of thanking us, the city of Cape Town is complaining that we must now reduce our consumption to 450 million litres per day. Personally, I don't believe it is possible for this city to use less than 600 million litres per day. Nor do I think in an age of waterborne sewage that we should use less than 87 litres per person per day. Note that a well-run city such as Carlsbad in California allows 400 litres per person per day. So we were using 150, which is about 37.5%, and now we're using 87, which is half of that. So we're using about less than 20% of the water of a well-run city, and we get told to use less. And our water prices are already 6 times higher than they were 2 years ago. In fact, people using less than 6 kilolitres had free water, and now those people are paying 25 rand per kilolitre, and soon it'll be 125 rand, not per kilolitre, 25 rand for 6 kilolitres, and then 125 rand for 6 kilolitres. But if you consider that it was naught, and it's gone up to 25 or up to 125, it's an infinite increase in price, from naught to 25 or naught to 125. So the city would have put up prices by 30 times in just 2 years. The city of Cape Town said that the higher tariffs would be used for water infrastructure, and in the past 2 years, over 600 million litres of desalination could have been added to the system. There are plans to pump desalinated water into the Low and Ross dams. There are plans to pump water from rivers into dams. There are plans to use Table Mountain water from the Cape Town's rivers and the water from the mountain and Cape Town's rivers. And many of these plans are decades old and none implemented. But why haven't these plans been implemented? The reason is because South Africa is a communist country, where all money must flow via the centre, and where all decision making is made by the minister. If you read any of the acts and the laws in South Africa, you'll find that the minister must make the decision, not the committee, the minister. If it was a committee, there'd be no opportunity for corruption, because 15 people would get together and make decisions. But because it's the minister, you just put a bag of gold on her desk and she does it. I know people on the planning committee in the city of Cape Town, and they say they've been ignored for years. Planning committees are ignored. People are currently blaming Mayor Patricia Dill for corruption. But the GCTCA, the Greater Cape Town Civic Alliance, already knew of this problem 3 years ago when I was on the committee. Desalination plus using table mountain water plus using river water implies decentralization. The same is true for renewable energy that I've been crusading for a decade. And I won the South African Alternative Energy Association's prestigious Green Merlin Award for my service to renewable energy in South Africa. There's a way to solve our crisis. It begins with us. We must take responsibility for ourselves and remove ourselves from the South African curse, waiting for the future while blaming the past. I invented this phrase. We wait for the future. We blame the past. We're not present. Another phrase I invented. Why are there grades in schools in South Africa? Because there aren't standards anymore. When I was at school, we had standards. So you got to standard 8, you had a standard. South Africa has gone from the lowest to the lowest common denominator. And if there's a standard 3 grade 5 education that our president has, everybody must have the same education, so that we're all the same. Standards imply 100%. They imply doing our jobs conscientiously and tenaciously. They imply difference and a rainbow nation of possibility with unity and diversity, a dream that we share with our father, Tata, father of the nation, Nelson Mandela. Standards imply that we will be on time, that we will plan and manage our project, that we will be on budget and the quality will be the desired quality. They imply that we will find solutions. Grades, what do they imply? I can grade you 100%, but what standard do you achieve? It is time for active citizens to become active citizens. This link is to the National Planning Committee report, which I commented on a few years ago. It took a week to write a 50-page report on the 500-page National Planning Commission document. And we must take responsibility for ourselves. It is time to stop blaming others and to stop being entitled. Blame and entitlement, being selfish, are the two biggest cancers on this planet. That's corroborated not just by me, but by Caroline Mace and many others. Let us take responsibility, and with God's help we save ourselves. There's a link to my mandamus, and I'm going to do a separate recording of the mandamus. The Constitutional Court and the Minister of Water and Sanitation have until the 9th of February, this is this Friday, 2018, to respond, and to ensure that the Western Cape has enough water. If they do not do this, then this active citizen will declare a state of emergency, which is his constitutional right. And why should I do this? Why should I declare the state of emergency? And perhaps why should I have this right as a junior party in the government, whereas the president or the national committee or the province or the government or parliament could all mandamus the Minister of Water and Sanitation. And sanitation implies cleaning up, becoming sane, sanitary, sanitation. Sanitation starts with the word sane. But you've got to clean up your act. You've got to clean up your environment. You've got to clean up your water. You've got to clean your sewage in order to be sane. Why do I have the right to declare a state of emergency? It's the same reason that the head of the United States Navy has a Twitter account. If one of his privates in the field sees something, this private must report this to the platoon commander. The platoon commander reported to the captain of the company of 150 people. The captain reported to the battalion colonel, who reported to his regimental colonel, who reported to his brigade brigadier, who reported to his Division 2 Star General, who reported to his Corps 3-star General, who reported to his Army 4-star General, who reported to his Field Marshal. This process can take weeks or months, and at every point the private story can be changed, manipulated, misunderstood, or worst of all put into the bin. So the head of the army needs a private and open line, and his account is on Twitter. And yes, he probably gets hundreds of crappy information, and his enemies probably send loads of misinformation, and so his Twitter account is managed by a Watson-type supercomputer, which sifts through all the information received, automatically does background checks on the sender, adds the sender to the watch list, compares the information with all the other information that the command has at his disposal, and then it decides what it is going to do. I've also tweeted the head of the 6th Fleet, which is responsible for Africa, and the head of the AfricaCom, which manages Southern Africa. Why have I done this? If Cape Town runs out of water, Cape Town will enter a civil war. Imagine 4 million people without water. We already have scuffles in supermarkets of people trying to get water bottles off a pallet. And we had a train that arrived at Muizenberg Station on the coast a few weeks ago on a very hot 35-degree day, and people got off the train to go to the beach, and all the taps on the platform were closed. And people started scuffling with each other and fighting with each other because I didn't have water, and you had water, and I was thirsty, and I said, please give me some water, and you said no. So I grabbed it from you, and we had a fight. And this is just a few hundred people without water. Imagine 4 million people without water. A civil war happens when neighbors start fighting with each other. In this case, it will be over water. And a water shortage implies a famine. So there will be a food shortage. As the state of internecine war escalates and people start dying and cholera and typhus take hold, due to stagnant sewage and other problems, the world's terrorist organizations will arrive, and perhaps a bunch of private armies. These people try and steal land and buildings and properties and also use the war for their own nefarious deeds. And this means that liberators will be required. And who are the world's top liberators? Who gets involved in saving other people? Who cares about other people the most? And who is maligned the most by those who want to take everything for themselves? Well, the answer is obvious. It's the United States of America, it's Israel, it's Japan, it's Germany. It's everyone who has fleets and aircraft and provisions, ready to help others when the shit hits the fan. And perhaps one should ask, why these countries do this? Obviously it's the right thing to do, but more importantly they understand that earthquakes and hurricanes and droughts and famines can lead to full-scale world war, and perhaps even nuclear war, and that is the last thing we need. Declaring a state of emergency now would automatically activate and bring all these peaceful forces to our shores, and they will be at peace, not at war. They will come and help, bringing water-making machines that can make hundreds of millions of liters of water, bringing army and special forces and civil support service people who can maintain law and order and keep everyone alive and ensure that we all have the water and food and healthy environment we need to live in. I've even sent an email to the head of the control tower at Cape Town International Airport saying that the day after declaring a state of emergency, Cape Town International Airport is going to be the busiest single runway airport in the world, and they should probably involve other local airports such as Langebaan, a military airfield, in helping these big planes to bring stuff in, and probably the port will be full as well. And what are people focused on? Themselves, hoarding water, pushing people out of the way so they can get 5 liters of water. And how long will the 5 liters last them? 1 day? 2 days? And then what happens? And what should people be doing? People should support my mandamus. Find out what it is. Ask Premier Helen Zille to immediately mandamus the government via the Constitutional Court and give them 72 hours to respond. So legally I have to give the minister 72 hours to respond, but I gave them 10 days. If the minister doesn't respond or she doesn't perform, I solve the water crisis within 72 hours. Premier Helen Zille must declare a state of emergency to bring all peaceful forces to the tavern of the seas. And like I said before, if Helen, she told me to call her Helen, is too afraid to do this, then I will do it. I'm already organizing a press conference. In 2016, I deregistered as a voter. Note, I deregistered as a voter and I became a common and a citizen because I understood the Constitution. And the preamble to the Constitution says something like, we a people hereby get together to form a republic, and we hereby appoint an agent to represent us in government. And the way that we, in parliament and government, the way we do that is we register as a voter. So I walked into a registration office in Constantia in 2016, 18 months ago, and I asked the person as I walked in, I'd like to deregister, and she gave me the registration document. And I said, no, I'd like to deregister, and she looked at me aghast. What's this? She sent me to a manager. And I said to a manager, I'd like to deregister. So the manager gives me the document. I say, I've already got the document. I filled it in twice. I'd like you to sign one copy and give me one copy, which she does. And I'm leaving, and she says to me, I'd like to ask you a question. Now, she's not allowed to ask me the question before I deregister, because now she sees I'm on the private side. And she says, sir, because now I'm sir, I'm not David LIPSCHITZ anymore, I'm sir. She says to me, sir, why have you deregistered? And I said, because I'm going to represent myself in Parliament. And she says, okay. And when authority and power says, okay, like that, you know you're right. And then I walked out and I phoned my friend, who's a member of Parliament, and I said to her, I'd like to just tell you that I've just deregistered as a voter. And without a moment's hesitation, she said, see you in Parliament in 2019. See, they all understand. It's just that we don't understand. And with common law and with things that are in plain sight, everything is in plain sight. We just don't see it. The Constitution says I can appoint an agent to represent me in Parliament, and in a democracy, we accept this agent as the one elected by the majority of registered South Africans who vote. But the Constitution says I can represent myself as a people in Parliament, and that is my intention. And note, the Constitution protects minorities. So even though I might have voted for a party such as the ACDP, the African Christian Democratic Party, even though I'm Jewish, I've been voting for the ACDP for years, because I like the idea of having a Christian stroke, biblical stroke, religious voice in Parliament. And if you think about it, Helen Suzman, who was a member of the Progressive Federal Party, was a lone person in Parliament for many decades, and yet South Africa changed because of what people like her did. One seat in Parliament is enough to make the change. And the Constitution, in this democracy that we have now, protects minorities. And if the government, the ANC, get a majority in the 2019 election next year, and they change the Constitution, we could end up with a fascist state. And I don't want that. I love living in Cape Town. I don't want to leave. So we're on a threshold. We're on the threshold and tipping point of an age of abundance. Again, tipping point from Malcolm Gladwell's book called Tipping Point. We're on an age of abundance. I'm reading a book at the moment called Abundance. And it's a beautiful book about how the future is going to be. And even though it's going to be automatic, there's going to be so much opportunity for relaxation and holidays. If we can only get through the next 3 months together and alive, we would all be much more conscious. As a region and nation and province of the world, we'll be able to show the world how it's done. This earth has abundant energy and abundant electricity, abundant food, abundant everything. Where's this abundance? It's been enclosed by the enclosure movement for 500 years. It has an abundance of life. Just look at seeds on a tree, seeds in an apple. Look at the amount of life that's around us. And all God, or whatever you want to call God, universal wisdom, or the infinite, or divinity wants. He wants to share, he or she, or God, wants to share in creation with us, to enjoy the fruits of our labors, for us to help each other, and for us to repair God's divinity's world. We can do it. Let's. Kanako. The time is right for Africa to shine. And you can watch the video that this link points to. And there are 5,861 people who've viewed this on LinkedIn in the past 24 hours. 20 people have liked it, 7 people have commented, 7 shares. When I posted this at 5 o'clock on Saturday morning, by the time it got removed, over 1,000 people had liked the post. Over 1,000 people had shared the post. It was phenomenal. There were hundreds of comments. But then 2 people complained and it was removed. So because the minority, 2 people complained, the post, which thousands of people had read, and probably tens of thousands had read because of sharing, was removed. But luckily I had copies. And now I find myself a member of the banned group. In other words, people that have been banned from the main watershedding group on Facebook, who have now joined the watershedding group banned members. And there probably are 1 or 2 trolls in that group, but the fact of the matter is, it's an open group. You can post what you want. There's no censoring. Look, if you're going to attack somebody and you're going to be racist, your post is going to be removed. But if you say the DA are at fault, or the ANC are at fault, or the ACDP are at fault, or the IFP are at fault, they're all at fault. They all know better. They all know what a mandamus is. They all know what an interdict is. They all understand the law. They've all studied the Constitution. It's time that they did their jobs and stopped blaming each other. Blame and entitlement and fear cause cancer. It's a cancer on society. Let's get rid of it. Let's be happy and healthy and conscious and move up in the world. Thank you.